Hi guys, I'm Woodcraft Hamster, and I thought I'd do a really short video for you today about a topic I've been talking about with a few people recently, and that is carving safely, and more importantly, using safety equipment whilst carving. Now we've had a bit of a difference of opinion between me and a few other people, and I just thought I'd do a quick video to explain my thoughts on it. Now what do I mean by safety equipment for carving? So basically you've got things like gloves, you've got leather aprons, you can even get kind of butcher's gloves that are sort of made out of a chainmail that stops you from getting cut. And there's nothing wrong with those per se. I personally don't like to use them, and I thought I'd just spend a few minutes explaining why. So if I just take a glove as an example, now this is not a knife-proof glove, it's not made of Kevlar, it's just a standard glove that I use occasionally when I'm carving. Now, if I just put this on, now again this is not knife proof, so I'm going to use the back blunt edge of my blade just to show you an example. So I've got a piece of wood and I'm carving away, and for whatever reason I slip and go straight down my finger. Now if this was a knife proof glove and I was using the sharp edge of the blade, I wouldn't cut myself. Oh well, no problem, I'll carry on. And that's great, you've not hurt yourself. However, you are, in my view, instilling bad practices, and I think it's much more important to learn sort of correct knife or axe or saw, whatever it is you're doing, safety, to prevent yourself from having those sort of injuries. Now, yeah, I mean, I've said before in other videos, if you are a wood carver, whether you're just getting into it, you've been doing it for years, you will cut yourself. It's going to happen. The difference between having good knife safety and not is that if you cut yourself whilst using good knife safety, it will generally, and please disagree with me if you want to here, but I think it will generally be a very minor cut. It will be a small slip, or you will have had a piece of work like this and you'll have your finger in slightly the wrong place and you'll go, oh, I've just cut myself. Whereas if you're using poor knife safety, the chances of you doing something like this and catching yourself are much, much higher. Talking about things like leather aprons is another example. So a lot of the time people will hold a piece of material close to their chest, absolutely fine. And what will happen is, if you're practicing correct knife safety, you'll have your elbow locked into the side of your body and you can cut like this, but you can't actually make contact. I mean, I'm pushing as hard as I can here, and I cannot physically make contact with my chest with the knife blade. Now obviously if you've got a leather apron on, you may well be cutting away like this, having your arm out here somewhere, and if you do scrape against your chest with the knife blade, well, you've hit a leather apron. You'll put a little score in it, oh well, never mind, move on. But again, if you're in a position where you don't have that apron at some point and you're carving away like that and you slip because you've got used to doing that, you're then going to do yourself quite a serious injury. Now, moving on from that, what else was I going to say about this? I mean, really it boils down to, if I'm talking in a personal capacity, if you're running a business, there will be insurances and there will be things in line with that mean you have to have certain safety equipment. I'm reasonably sure that's the case. Maybe you're running a bushcraft course, maybe you're doing something with the scouts or something like that. And if that's the case, then you can't get out of it, that's fine. But I think it's very important to explain, even though that you're maybe having to use this safety equipment, you still need to learn how to use whatever tool you're using correctly and safely. But one thing I did want to mention just in regards to these gloves, I do wear a glove while carving quite regularly, and I'll show you exactly why. And it's not for a safety reason per se. If I just come a bit closer to the camera, so I've got the glove on my non-dominant hand, so the hand that I hold my work in, not what I hold my knife in. And the reason for the glove is so that I can essentially just use my thumb of the gloved hand just to put a bit of pressure on the back of the blade, and this is more of a comfort thing than anything else, because basically if I was to do this for half an hour to an hour without the glove on, I would start getting a very, very sore, tender spot on the back of my thumb. Whereas by using the glove, it just provides a bit of insulation. The same way sportsmen who kind of tape up their joints and things, you know, I've used everything from masking tape and gaffer tape around my thumb when I've been on a particularly long carving session, just to give you that little bit of padding so that you don't end up blistering the pad of your thumb. And I think that's a really, really useful way of doing it. Now, you don't have to by any means, but I find it works really, really well and helps with the comfort and not so much injured per se. I suppose you could class a blister as an injury, but it just insulates you a little bit from the work that you're doing. Whereas if I had it on, let's say, well, in fact, no, it'd be the same hand, wouldn't it? But again, I don't ever rely on this glove to protect me from the blade of my knife. I just use it to protect me, if that's the right word for it, for the back of my thumb, or the pad of my thumb, just to give me that little bit of protection on there, just to give me that little bit of comfort. So that's really it in a nutshell, guys. That's my view on safety equipment. I'm not knocking it. If you use it, that's fine. And you know, if you have to use it for a specific reason, and also, you know, if you're carving or doing woodworking for a living, you know, it does make sense to have something, maybe in terms of an apron at least, to protect you from certain things. I just don't particularly agree with the mindset that you need a piece of safety equipment to protect you from yourself, if that makes sense. You know, having a knife-proof glove on really is a false economy. You know, because you're only using that because you think that you're going to cut yourself. Now, yes, you may well do so. You know, I cut myself fairly regularly, to be perfectly honest, but never seriously, which is, I think, you know, the point I'm trying to get across. But essentially, you know, if you need to rely on something to protect you, and you know, we're talking hand tools here. You know, if you're using machinery or things like that, completely different kettle of fish, because you can't guarantee what's going to happen. I know that when I'm carving, I'm going to have wood chippings flying around, and I can almost guarantee where those wood chippings are going to fall within a very small radius. Whereas if I was using a bandsaw or a power sander, a power drill, anything like that, and you're going to have potential bits of wood chippings flying around, absolutely you should be wearing eye protection, maybe even some sort of mask. Now, even with my sanding, I don't wear a mask when I sand because I'm using my hand, essentially. I'm using a piece of sandpaper in my hand or on a block, and I'm not generating enough sawdust to be a risk to my health. And again, you know, if you're out in the field or something like that and you've got a small piece of sandpaper with you, you know, it makes absolutely no difference, especially if you're outside. I mean, my workshop's fairly small, but at the end of the day, you know, I'm not going to generate enough dust in here to have a hazardous effect to me. Anyway, guys, I've rambled on long enough. It was just a few thoughts on safety equipment for carving. I don't really buy into it. I think it can be a bit of a false economy in terms of, you know, you're allowing yourself to do certain things when you're wearing safety equipment that you wouldn't necessarily do if you weren't wearing it, and that's fine. But if you get into that habit regularly, and then you come across a situation where you don't have, you know, maybe you're out in the bush somewhere and you say, oh, do you know what, I'm going to carve myself a spoon to use with my evening meal tonight, and you haven't got your carving glove with you or your leather apron or anything like that, but you have got your knife. And what, you know, in terms of going outdoors and doing this kind of thing, you know, you need to have very, very good knife safety skills before you start carving, you know, anywhere, to be perfectly honest, but even more so when you're outdoors, because obviously, you know, help is not just around the corner. You can't just run inside the house and grab a bandage or something, you know, and call an ambulance or what have you. You know, you're out in the middle of nowhere. Even if you've got a phone on you with good signal, trying to guide someone to a particular area in a woodland or wherever you are is very, very difficult. But anyway, as I say, guys, I've been rambling for long enough, so I hope it was useful. Really interested to see your comments in the box below. I'd like to know your thoughts on safety equipment for carving, whether you use it, whether you don't use it, the reasons why. So yeah, as usual, comments and questions in the box below. Hit like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I hope you'll all join me next time. Thanks, guys.